What's going on, sci-fi fans? My name is Ben and welcome back to the bench for another episode here on our Raider ATST. This is the Bandai 148 scale kit and we are going to be pushing forward today, guys, trying to get some of the base work done, trying to get a few odds and ends finished up. So I'm excited to see what this is going to look like. Now I do have to go ahead and string in some easy line there for the tarp around the foot. That shouldn't be all that bad. And we do have a net we need to go ahead and install. Now for the net, I plan on using this right here. And this is one of those bags you would get from the supermarket. Usually has like potatoes in it or something like that. The nice thing about this is it's actually square openings. This one actually works very well. So we're going to go ahead and cut off just a little strip of this. Then we can go ahead and paint that up and we can next episode string it together after we have it all nicely painted. That I think will work very well, but we'll have to go ahead and figure out a way we can lash it down to the ATST's leg. So that shouldn't be all that difficult. Probably we'll end up using some easy line for that because that stuff works great and I've used it on other applications here on the model, so I'm pretty sure easy line will work for this too. Now, aside from the net, which I don't think will be this episode, we'll probably do that next episode, we're going to have to go ahead and work on the base. The base is going to be interesting because I've never actually done any sort of basing before, so that's going to be pretty much new to me. Now, I've been doing some research online and I've got a basic idea about what I want to do. I've got some supplies as well that I picked up recently, so that should be kind of interesting to see how it unfolds. In terms of the ATST, the last thing I want to really do with this is I want to apply some mud effects to the legs and the lower portion of the hull. Now I've got some Vallejo splash mud and I also have some Vallejo thick mud. I'm pretty sure that I could use these to add a little bit of extra detail to the feet and to the legs, but I don't want to go overboard with those. So we'll put those aside for right now. We'll do some research and maybe figure out how to do that next episode. But today, the main thing is I want to focus on that base. Now, of course, I do have to figure out some form of frame to go around this base, but no matter what I decide to choose, I have to have enough room in there for this little battery pack. This is a basic AA battery pack. It's not that big, but it's not really small either. So that has to go up inside any sort of frame that I use for this particular model. It does have two screws there, so I could maybe screw it to the side using some recessed screws, or maybe I can just build a little cubby and just slide it on in like I did for the Kelvin. Now, in terms of the frame itself, I want to go ahead and build something out of some wood. Now I found this wood just lying around one of my spares pile and it's pretty substantial. It's quite thick. I think I can sand it down and stain it and I think it'll look pretty cool. Plus it's elevated slightly, so it's going to be a little bit of a podium and I think this will look pretty nice. Now I could do this a couple different ways. I could simply just miter cut the ends so that I have a nice 45-degree angle at each corner, or I can just slap some wood together and just make everything square. I don't really want to do that though. I'm probably going to go ahead and go the mitered route. We can play around with that next episode. Now off camera, real quick, I just went ahead and airbrushed the net that I have here all in flat black. I actually left it a little thin so that some of that reddish orange color could kind of bleed through and it almost looks like rusty metal. It's kind of interesting. I don't know if it really picks up there on the camera, but I like how this looks. We're going to put that aside for right now. We're going to push into a time lapse and we are going to focus on lashing down that tarp on the foot. That shouldn't be all that difficult to do. We're going to follow the exact same procedure we did last time. I have my pin vise. I have a small needle in there. I'm going to go ahead and poke a couple holes through different corners of that tarp. We're going to string in some easy line, glue it down to the bottom of the foot, and call that done. Let's go ahead and push on, guys, see what we can do. Alright everybody, we are back and we have lashed down that tarp to that foot, so we're going to switch over to the base. And this is going to be interesting. I've never done this before, so let me go ahead and kind of walk you through what I'm planning. Watched a lot of videos online, I've read a lot of articles online as well, and it seems to be that there's kind of a common theme. Most of the terrain that you see is going to be glued down with PVA glue. So I have myself some PVA glue here and I've watered it down very, very slightly with a little bit of tap water, just so that it kind of spreads and flows a little bit easier. Now, one of the blog posts I was reading that kind of walked you through building very simple, quick terrain actually had you stipple an area with this PVA glue and then pour some sand over top of that to give it a little bit of interest. That is exactly what I'm planning on doing here. But luckily for me, the base actually has already been molded with kind of undulation built into it. So I'm just going to go ahead and accentuate that by going over certain areas that are raised and giving them a little bit of the sand treatment. Some PVA glue, spread down some all-purpose sand, and we're good to go. Now, the gentleman actually used play sand, but I don't have any of that. I just have some all-purpose sand, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of use this. Now that my PVA glue is nicely applied, let's go ahead and just spread this sand all over the base. Not really too worried about getting it where the glue is not, because I can then just shake it off a little bit later, and there's not going to be a problem. I could have used some finer grain sand, but I thought in this case, we're just going to use not only what we have, but also I wanted to use something that was a little bit thicker, a little bit coarser. I think that would fit a bit better with the 1/48 scale. If I was working with a figure, say something like 28mm or something smaller, I think using very fine sand would be a much better way to go. Now that we have our PVA glue and sand nicely applied, let's go ahead and give this board a little bit of a shake, and we should knock off all the excess that we don't need. So there we go. As you can see, I only have the sand in the places where I applied the PVA glue, and that's going to act as some kind of visual interest. I think it's going to look pretty cool. Make sure I have all the little spots covered that I want, add a little bit extra here and there. I think we're in good position to let this dry, and then we'll be back and take a look at some painting. Now for paint, I've decided to use a couple of colors, both by Tamiya. The first color here is going to be a flat brown. That's going to be painted over the entire surface of the base. Then I'm going to come back with a little bit of flat earth, and I'm going to highlight the sandy areas, maybe add a couple more highlights here and there. So that's kind of my initial plan. Then once that paint is dry, I'm going to come back with my PVA glue water mixture, and I'm going to add a little bit of static grass, 2mm in length, around each of these sandy patches. So let's go ahead and get on with the second time lapse. Let's play around with some static grass and some paint. right, everybody. Well, I have to say that that actually has started off beautifully. I really like how this is looking so far. Let's go ahead and just tap off the excess static grass. And as you can kind of see, we have some dark spots, some light spots. We have our sand, and then we have the green 2mm static grass right around each of those sandy areas. It's kind of cool. I don't know really what I'm doing, but I'm having fun doing it. And that's the important part. So now I think we're going to go ahead and switch over to a little bit longer static grass. And I have a couple different lengths. So we're going to mix up some and see what we can come up with. I'm going to take some PVA glue and I'm just going to go ahead and stipple it around the rest of the board. And I'm also going to go ahead and come up a little bit into the 2mm static grass and add a little bit of extra color. Now the 2mm is actually a medium green. So if you look at it closely, you can see greens and browns, dark greens, light greens. Just it looks really, really nice. So that's a very cool color. I also have 4mm dark green and 4mm light green. And then I have some 7mm dark green. So we're going to go ahead and mix up those two 4mm along with that 7mm. Then we're going to apply that over all of the areas here that we have not covered with static grass. So I'm going to go ahead and paint up the different sections with this PVA glue water mixture. And I think after this is ready to go, we're going to go ahead and try a static grass applicator. Now, I've never done any work with static grass before, but I really wanted to try to see what it would be like. So we're going to give it a try, see what happens. Now the instructions tell me to go ahead and put a needle or some sort of metal pin into the medium that I'm working with. And in this case, it's plastic and glue. So I'm not really sure how that's going to go. I've just made sure that the PVA glue is just kind of up on that needle so that maybe that counts. I don't really know. So we're going to go ahead and plug in our static grass applicator. And I'm supposed to just give it a couple of shakes while holding down a button. And it's supposed to make the grass straight up on end. And I can already tell that, yeah, it's actually doing that. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to go ahead and go over all the areas that I went ahead and applied that PVA glue. I'm going to go ahead and cover everything I can. Probably put too much on, to be honest, but that's okay. We can just shake off the excess and we can save it and use it later. And then once that is more or less tacked up, we'll give it a shake, see how it turned out. Now just giving that board a couple of taps with my finger. Let's knock off the excess and let's see what we did. All right, let's go ahead and flip it over and oh yeah, you know what? That's not too bad for my very first time. Not too bad at all. The static grass applicator did work. Most of the grass is standing either straight up or straight out to the side. So I'm going to probably have to kind of brush it up and make sure it lines up where I want it. But that's not half bad. Now I did notice there's a couple of, I guess, bald spots that I want to go ahead and add a little bit more color to. So we're going to go ahead and again use our static grass applicator and I'm only going to run some 7mm dark green. So I'm going to go ahead and apply just in different spots here and there. That might give us the impression of maybe some bushes or some darker recesses where maybe there's more water, so we have darker, richer greens. I mean, I don't know. That just sounds good to me. So we're going to try it. And I'm going to add in some PVA glue on different areas that look a little sparse. Then we'll go ahead and repeat the same pattern. And well, hopefully, if everything goes according to plan, we should have some interesting color variations. So let's try it. All right, let's go ahead and give it a couple of taps, knock off the excess static grass and flip it over, see how it looks. Okay, kind of cool looking. So I'm happy with that. Let's put it aside and let it dry. And this is how it looks, a little bit of a close-up. I'm not sure how much color you can see through the camera, but there are some very interesting greens. And I think this is a really interesting looking base. It's not bad for my first time out. Now in terms of materials, I just stuck with static grass and most of this is Woodland Scenics. I've got the 7mm medium green, I've got 4mm dark green, and I've got 4mm light green. I also have 2mm medium green from, I think it's Stonehenge, a different manufacturer altogether. So with this stuff, I can actually base a ton of figures, and I don't think I'll run out anytime soon. That's a win-win right there. But I think that's enough work for today, guys. We are done for this episode. I have the base more or less done. I need to go ahead and figure out, maybe add a little bit more color here and there. But for the most part, I like how it's turned out. I need to go ahead and do a little bit of mud effects, though, on the ATST to give it a little bit more wear and tear. But other than that, guys, I am super pleased with how this has turned out so far. That static grass applicator was awesome. I've never used one before, but it was very simple, super easy to do, and I think it did what it was designed to do. Most of my static grass is standing upright, quite secure. It's not going to come off anytime soon. But anyway, guys, next episode, we're going to come back. I'm going to attempt to go ahead and make the form around the base, and we're going to put on the last finishing touches. So hopefully next episode, we'll be able to get this all wrapped up. So until then, guys, you know the drill. Go out there and get yourself some bench time, have some fun, build something cool, and we'll see you back here on episode 10 of the Raider ATST here on Sci-Fi Wednesdays. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you soon.